Noah Francis introduced himself as the eldest son of the Francis family, and Suo announced that he was the 33rd Demon Lord, and the two looked at each other with determination. Then one of them confidently promised to show all his strength, counting on the support of the enemy, and emphasized the difficulty of the game with hundreds of scenarios, uttering the key phrase absolute commitment. After this, the narrative introduced a scoundrel nobleman, in whose body the reincarnated man was, and he showed off his muscles with a smug smile, loudly boasting about them. Then the young man raised his glass, and behind him stood two companions, black feathers swirling around him, while a voiceover praised those who are able to change the world through hard work, courage, and physical strength. After this, he resolutely prepared himself at the entrance to the majestic mansion, while an elderly mentor nearby anxiously asked if he was sure of his choice. The young man firmly confirmed it and took the first step. He then concentrated and explained that the enhancing magic worked through the flow of mana throughout the body, and then prepared to demonstrate it with a powerful blow. At the same time, Leonhardt was preparing to cast a fire spell while maintaining another weave, and was looking intently at his hand where the magic circle was being formed. After this, he exhaled heavily and admitted that he was unable to control the flame, realizing that he could only rely on physical strength, without creating a single spark. Then someone asked him if he was okay, and he replied that he was unharmed, without a scratch, but noted the impressive movements of the interlocutor, admitting that he could not repeat them. Suddenly, a cheerful girl pounced on him from behind, shouting his title, but he warned her that such jumps were dangerous and remarked that he still had a lot to learn. Afterwards, a cheerful Kiara asked if training was over and invited him to play together. Then she noticed that her brother had changed and was surprised why he began to tolerate classes and physical exercises, and he awkwardly admitted that he was continuing to study, but perhaps tomorrow. He thought silently, while his sister, with a smile, suggested that they play tomorrow and encouraged him, wishing him success. After that, Leonhardt remembered how he had changed and quietly noted his previous monotonous life, where there were only games, sleep, and school, like an ordinary student. Noah soon woke up in shock in his strange bedroom and realized that he was in a game world, and behind him two people were desperately calling his name. He then explained that Absolute Commitment was a fantasy game about an academy, and revealed that his current form was Noah Francis, a villain and a scoundrel. The narrative went on to clarify that Lord Francis possessed colossal wealth and could buy almost anything, but was distinguished by his evil tongue and perverted disposition. The scene showed a vicious aristocrat walking through a pile of documents, described as a scoundrel who used money to solve everything, and the voiceover noted that Noah Francis would always die at the hands of the Demon Lord no matter the outcome of the game. The narration then depicted him dying under gravity magic, in a pitiful state, and official merchandise in the form of Noah cubes emphasized the mocking nature of the story. Finally, he firmly declared to himself that he would not remain worthless and would not die in this world, deciding at any cost to avoid death under the yoke of gravity magic. Then he set out for a run with determination, thinking that he had to train harder, even if he had no talent. He pushed himself through 20 laps, then did 100 push-ups and the same number of squats, striving to become stronger. After that, he clenched his fist and firmly declared that he would fight alongside the hero against the Demon Lord, convinced that this was the only way to survive. Meanwhile, the young man asked where Kiara was, and the maid replied that she was getting ready. At that moment, he was addressed as Noah-sama while sitting at a long dining table in a spacious and elegant room. Then the stern Seabass asked what should be done with the slave, showing severity and authority in his voice. He remembered from the reference book that the butler, once a skilled killer, had been in the service of the Francis family for many years and secretly spared the slaves who were ordered to be eliminated. Soon a tense conversation broke out. One of the maids asked whether a prisoner who had insulted someone and ended up in the dungeon should be executed, while the two men stood aside in silence. Then Leonhardt resolutely demanded not to kill the prisoners, but offered to free them from slavery and give them work, which caused one of the men to become noticeably nervous and begin to hesitate. After this, the interlocutor asked doubtfully whether he was sure of his decision, expressing obvious anxiety and confusion. Then the stern man chided the younger man for harshly punishing the slaves, and the younger man, looking dejected, asked him to stop. Someone off to the side silently called him the worst of the worst. The young man thanked everyone for their patience, and the older man admitted he had caused a lot of trouble. The three maids watched the scene with obvious concern. The maids were astonished by Noah's expression of gratitude, and one even suggested he was ill, insisting on calling a doctor. But he insisted he was perfectly healthy, and the butler wondered if Noah was trying to change. After this, the determined young man ran along with a group of muscular men who were shouting loudly about the strength of their muscles, and he insisted that he wanted to see everything with his own eyes. Meanwhile, he felt himself getting closer to Seabass, and the elder encouraged Noah-sama, looking at him with an expression as if he was looking at his own grandson. Later, the bald strongman admitted that the young man had more muscle than before during their arm wrestling, but said it was still not enough. Eventually, the younger man grew tired and retreated. Noah watched a group of burly men training in the courtyard and thought the mansion's workers looked like monsters. He recalled his own status, where his performance was average and his talent was non-existent. One of the musclemen encouraged him to focus on training his biceps and back, and the young man, drenched in sweat, enthusiastically promised not to stop. Afterwards, he noted that Noah still did not understand the true charm of muscles, although his figure had become noticeably more impressive than before. Then Noah called him, and the strongman suggested communicating through muscles, explaining that this way they could achieve greater heights physically and spiritually, which surprised him. Soon the three men finished their exercises, noting that it was time to add more weight, and then called Noah to join them. One of the strong men enthusiastically praised the young man's figure in front of the mirror, but he became embarrassed and tried to stop the flow of praise. Noah happily admired his muscles while the two people next to him cheered him on, and he suddenly found himself enjoying the experience. Then one of the strong men encouraged the boy to run, gave the signal to start, and several runners, including him, rushed forward on command. Afterwards, the two strong men ran shoulder to shoulder, competing with all their might, each recognizing the other's mastery of strength as both pressed forward with determination. The man with the horns admitted that he had gotten too excited and expressed doubt that Noah could keep up, but at that moment the two suddenly rushed away from the gate wall. Then the young man, sweating profusely but smiling, declared that he had caught up with them, and the narrator admired his tenacity and positive attitude during the tough training. The crowd cheered loudly, while a stern observer noted in Noah-sama a rare talent for hard work and growing in strength. Later, he lay in bed and smiled smugly as he thought about his new skills: appraisal, flash step, detection, and parallel thinking, and also noticed that his stats had increased after the increase in strength. A cheerful girl joyfully jumped on the surprised young man, calling him to play, and another one next to her, smiling, expressed impatience with anticipation. Then one of them teased him, like a demanding lover, about which was more important, her or his studies. He admitted with an awkward laugh that he still had a few classes left. At that moment, someone called out to Noah-sama, happily announcing a new way to train. Afterwards, the man cheerfully invited the two to join again, but one politely declined while the other noticed Kiara-sama's appearance. Meanwhile, Leonhardt sat next to the girl, and she pointed out his smile, which he hadn't recognized at first. Then he remembered how the maids and even his former girlfriend had begun to avoid him, avoiding his gaze, and he realized a rift had formed between him and the servants. At the same time, the determined woman remembered how someone had once left the mansion with many followers, and admitted that she did not want a repeat of this. The two men were discussing how many had come to respect the other in recent months, while the dark-haired man reacted quietly until the girl suddenly hugged him from behind. Then he softly said her name, and she pressed herself tightly against someone, expressing her joy at the meeting. The narrator recalled that Noah and Kiara lost their mother early in life. Their father was rarely home, and Kiara's only source of trust was her brother, despite his bad behavior. Noah, however, resolved to be a worthy older brother. After this, the boy turned to his older brother, who solemnly promised to protect him, adjusting his aristocratic attire with determination. Soon the confident young man proudly showed off his toned body, and the amazed girl exclaimed why he was undressing. Then he timidly asked if Noah-sama's older brother was called handsome, and she thoughtfully asked what the servants had been calling him lately. After this, the girl angrily called the surprised young man a muscular idiot, and he tried to stop her, but she ran away, shouting, "Stupid idiot." Finally, he slammed the door and told his sister that he would not stop training his muscles because he wanted to get stronger, and she looked out from behind the door and again called him an idiot. The determined young man clenched his fist and declared that he would become a super-muscular idiot, while the twin-tailed girl walked down the hallway, thinking that her brother would always protect her, and shyly asked for it herself. Then one girl suddenly fell through the door, realizing that she could neither move nor speak, and another remarked from afar that she had never heard him call himself brother before. Meanwhile, the maid walked down the long corridor and stopped for a moment. She thought she heard Kiara-sama's voice, but then convinced herself that it was just her imagination. At that moment, 2 dumbbells were shown on the floor, and cheerful shouts of muscle strength and unanimous confirmation of these words were heard all around. Afterwards, he lay on the floor, breathing heavily from fatigue, and remembered that rest is also an important part of training after grueling loads. Soon the atmosphere calmed down, and one person said that he was able to sense the location of everyone, and the others discussed this ability with curiosity and surprise. Noah was shocked to hear Kiara's name, and then someone urgently informed him that she had been kidnapped. He jumped up and demanded to know who had dared to take her. Leonhardt forcefully opened the door and loudly said that she needed to be rescued immediately, and the white-haired man confirmed that he had detected this with his detection ability. However, one warned that the mansion's guards had been completely defeated and suggested they remain inside. But the other resolutely declared that he would go anyway, despite the danger, and face a powerful adversary face to face. Then the stern servant addressed Noah with respect, and he firmly stated that Kiara was waiting for him. The elder promised to lead the expedition if anyone fell behind, and the younger gratefully agreed, thanking Seabass for accompanying him down the corridor. After this, Noah and his companion ran down the passage, discussing plans, but outside, under the cover of night, they were stopped by a sharp cry. Someone shouted at Noah, ordering him to look up. At the top of the cliff, a cloaked figure held a girl, and from below, another man called out her name as the two argued over whether to climb up the cliff or go around the other side. At that moment, Leonhard leaped powerfully off the cliff, and Garrett shouted to Seabass, who confirmed that he had managed to catch something while the events below were rapidly escalating. He then demanded that Kiara be released immediately, but the hooded figure admitted that he had wanted to lure him to his comrades, although now he intended to fight alone, while Kiara herself watched, gagged and afraid. Noah, confused, asked who he was, and he revealed that he had once served as the guardian of the Francis family, but had made one mistake, causing Noah to involuntarily remember the past. 2 soldiers insisted that they apologize to Noah-sama, but the other said he could handle it himself, while the scarred man furiously vowed to never forgive Noah Francis for executing the man. The young man was tormented by anxiety about saving Kiara and regretted that Seabass had not been able to cancel all the orders of destruction while the cloaked figure stood firmly nearby and the girl sat silently nearby. He then used the level 2 assessment skill, scanned the enemy, and realized that his indicators were slightly higher, and in his current state, it would be impossible to win. At this time, the man with the cane confidently approached, noted the strength of his opponent, then mockingly said that he was on his knees, unable to act alone, and asked if he was afraid. The frightened girl was called a piece of trash, and 2 people stood in a dark forest clearing, and one coldly asked if she knew what they called her in the mansion. Then Leonhard listened intently as the older man rudely called someone a parasite of the Francis family, devoid of talent, dignity, and culture. The enraged man shouted that the emperor was worthless and unloved, claiming that the parasites needed to be crushed immediately, while the tied-up girl looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. At this time, the girl with 2 ponytails sat gagged in the arms of a man, and another watched from the side, while the narrator reminded about the burden of the heir and the constant ridicule from the nobility and adults. The man angrily ordered the excuses to stop and hit the woman, while the young man shouted her name and accused his brother of perversion and of all the troubles. Then the determined girl, through tears, declared that this man was her beloved brother, which shocked him, and the third participant apologized for executing his friend and admitted that he could never forgive himself. Leonhard delivered a powerful blow and then turned to the cloaked man, admitting that he understood his hatred and was willing to accept death if necessary, to which the shocked girl reacted loudly. After this, Leonhard demanded that Kiara be released, warning that he would not tolerate any more harm to her, and moved forward with a determined gaze through the forest. In a rage, one threatened to kill the girl, screaming about the pain they shared, but a determined young man nearby encouraged Kiara to endure a little longer, despite the danger. Then he suddenly shouted about muscle strength with enthusiasm, and she asked in shock why he was doing this now. The man declared the importance of warming up, while the 2 laughed at him and the huge opponent angrily threatened to crush the stunned girl. The determined youth fell back in confusion as the tree shattered without his touch, and then he remembered his endless training for revenge. Soon, the cloaked man used huge magical shackles and threatened to crush the enemy, while he ran away, and the attacker laughed with confidence. The dark-haired fighter was thrown back by a powerful blow and crashed into the ground, while the white-haired one approached and mockingly said that he had lost confidence, demanding to show real strength. He then declared that he had worked harder than anyone else to one day become the one who would defeat the Demon Lord, showing determination even in exhaustion. He angrily rejected the thought of death in the prologue and met the gaze of the huge monster looming over them. Leonhardt furiously proclaimed his desire to become stronger, and the enemy screamed that he had grabbed him and demanded death, unleashing a crushing blow. However, the young man instantly disappeared using the flash step technique, leaving the enemy shocked that Noah Francis was capable of such a thing. The dark-haired warrior then swiftly attacked the stunned blonde and declared that he had surpassed his limits and was no longer the same person. In the end, the determined young man declared himself the heir to the Francis family and charged forward with fierce concentration. The young man hesitated, unsure of what to do, while the bound prisoner desperately begged him to kill him so he could reunite with his friend in the next life. At that moment, the stern man approached and reminded him that the prisoner had endangered Kiara-sama. After this, the man with a stern expression declared that the situation required proper torture, and then offered to forgive Noah-sama, as if absolving him of guilt. The young man then explained that Kiara was safe and sound, so there was no point in continuing. He admitted that one of his past victims stood before him, which surprised the elder, but then he heard the accusation that Seabass had secretly released Aldo sentenced to death. This caused great astonishment. Soon the older man asked again if it was true, and the young man confidently confirmed that his friend was alive and well, while the girl stood anxiously nearby. Then the stern man assured everyone of the truth of what he had heard and, unable to contain himself, burst into tears of relief, thanking fate that someone had survived. The two watched in silence. At that moment, Noah and Kiara exchanged glances as they noticed the servants appearing, and he wondered what to say to them, pondering the situation with a concentrated look. Under the starry sky, the young man remembered how the three of them had once secretly run off to admire the sky, and then the elderly interlocutor acknowledged the changes in it. Then he thought about how he had always felt strange, but over time he had changed, and now he called himself with a smile a nobleman who adored muscles. Afterwards, he cheerfully picked up his sister, despite her protests that she was no longer a child, and suggested they return home. People with torches watched them in the forest. Meanwhile, the maid told Cecile about her upcoming engagement to Noah, and she wondered what kind of man he was. Outside, two men walked along the path, and one sneezed, wondering if he had caught a cold. The young man calmly sipped tea at a garden table, a stern butler standing behind him. At that moment, he once again reflected on his reincarnation as the villainous Noah Francis. Soon, an elderly man called to Noah from afar, and then a stern, scarred man addressed him directly, saying the time had come. In that moment, Noah realized an important truth. After this, the young man admired his muscles with delight and posed next to two strong men who demonstrated their strength with serious faces. Later, he received a sealed letter from a servant right after training, and upon opening it, he was surprised to learn that Cecile Edward-sama had been chosen as his bride. Then, before the readers, Cecile Edward herself appeared, Noah Francis's fiancée, majestic and confident, combining beauty and intelligence. Even Noah himself couldn't help but admire her. In 2 years, Noah was supposed to enter Absolute Academy and meet Cecile for the first time. But later, consumed by rage, he dreamed of revenge, while the strong bond between Cecile and the hero remained unbreakable. She despised Noah's villainy and broke off their engagement. Then Cecile sharply declared him as disgusting as the rumors and wished never to see him again. The man collapsed in despair, thinking he would never recover from such words. After that, he vowed to meet her only at the academy and not to look for her until then, remembering the advice to remain steadfast, although thoughts about the future were difficult. Finally, the three strong men, led by a determined young man, enthusiastically began the grueling training, as if with a single impulse. Noah arrived for training, and his fencing instructor, Lion, an A-rank adventurer, suggested he could rest before the lesson began. However, the young man firmly insisted he was fine. Then he proudly showed off his muscles and announced that he'd completed 100 practice swings as homework. Someone, surprised, asked if he'd used the sword with the huge stone tied to it. The young man happily admitted that he had done just that, explaining that he had considered the sword not heavy enough. The tall mentor reminded him that as the heir he was obliged to at least master this skill, and the strong man nearby burst out laughing, noting that he was always too strict. After this, the young man enthusiastically declared that he wanted to get much stronger and asked permission to continue warming up. The man in the suit and the two strong men agreed. Then the young trainee, drenched in sweat, determinedly led the two strong men, performing 20 bunny jumps and loudly shouting words of encouragement. An observer on the sidelines looked at two men carrying a heavy load and thought that one of them was not sparing himself, always working at the limit. The serious mentor remembered his diligent student, who continues to train even without supervision, admiring his pure heart and calling him a madman, but the best of the best. The young man, tired and drenched in sweat, admitted that Noah-sama had exceeded all his expectations, while nearby someone calmly adjusted his suit. At that moment, the man reflected on Noah-sama's limitless potential and admitted he wished he could watch him forever. Then he abruptly asked how much longer someone was going to lie on the ground. The magic teacher Fryklia was lying on the ground, exhausted and having used up all her mana, and was asking with irritation what was wrong with this child. Then the boy confidently invited her to cast a powerful spell at him, promising to grow faster, and she reacted with surprise and suspicion to such boldness. After that, he joyfully greeted Freyja-sensei, who had just come to her senses, and invited her to join his muscle training. Noah was asked if he was doing any muscle training, and then two strongmen invited Freyja to join in, causing her to panic and try to break free from their grip. They stopped at a brick wall, and the young man called her the greatest sorceress of the territory, assuring that without her they would be completely helpless. The girl noticed a huge barrel nearby containing 30 bottles of mana potion and, surprised, asked if it really was the elixir. The man then recognized it as the source of Noah-sama's growth. He then ordered her to drink every drop and recover as quickly as possible, and the amazed girl exclaimed that this was too much for one person. Soon, a confident warrior with a shield asked if Noah was ready for their duel, and the young swordsman firmly replied that he was fully prepared. Emotional voices could be heard in the distance. Leonhardt quickly attacked with his blade, but his opponent blocked the blow and praised his skill, while criticizing his timing, which was easy to predict. They fought fiercely, one dodged the blow, the other acknowledged it was a good one. And then the story shifted to a man at the gate of the mansion, reflecting on his former hatred for the Francis family. One man wondered why he should even bother teaching the Francis family's eldest son and considered perhaps refusing. At that moment, another addressed him as Lion-sama and offered to accompany him. The two men walked down the hallway, one pondering Noah Francis's brutal reputation and imagining what would happen if he were ordered executed and forced to flee. Then the third noticed Lion-sensei nearby. A young man with a bright smile introduced himself as Noah Francis, and the girl, bowing low, asked not to hold her back during training, even if there were difficulties. The mentor then remarked that he had never seen the nobleman bow his head, and wondered if this was truly the Noah Francis he had heard about. He also recalled that Noah-sama always did everything he was ordered to do. The two mockingly called Noah a useless aristocrat who only had money. But the determined young man stood up for him, declaring him a hard-working and wonderful person, and urged everyone to accept him. The young swordsman, breathing heavily, vowed to land at least one blow on Lion-sensei today, feeling the strength accumulated through daily training. He raised his sword, activating both strength and parallel thinking at the same time, and the observer asked in surprise how long it had been since he had mastered such skills. Leonhardt launched a swift attack with flash step, catching his opponent off guard, who barely managed to dodge and was shocked by the speed. Then the young man confidently parried the attack with a shining sword, and the determined boy jumped behind his back, preparing for the next move. Leonhardt noticed someone suddenly disappear, and then a sword struck with a loud thud, eliciting a cry of pain. He turned around in surprise and then found himself on the ground, rubbing his bruised head. The sword's wielder confidently declared victory over Noah, who, wiping away his sweat, admitted defeat, noting that it was his own mistake. Afterwards, they discussed how using the power required a great deal of concentration, and that parallel thinking allowed for the simultaneous activation of multiple skills, including flash step. The young man admitted he only saw Lion disappear because he was moving faster. Lion then calmly revealed that he was an A-rank adventurer known as Shadow Lion. The High Mentor explained that the Shadow Figure's ability was linked to the family's hereditary magic. The boy considered this unfair, but reluctantly agreed to accept the fact. Afterwards, he praised the student for quickly mastering the power and maintaining parallel thinking. The young man responded with a broad, grateful smile. The man advised his shy student not to overexert himself, focusing on developing his confidence. The student promised to put forth his best efforts. Leonhardt suggested going to the guild for tomorrow's lesson, which surprised the young man, who immediately asked what kind of place it was. Garrett admitted that the magic lesson would be cancelled tomorrow but agreed to meet in the morning. The scene then shifted to Leonhardt, resting in bed and thinking about the guild. Lying on his back with a smile, he admitted to himself that he was looking forward to visiting a place that he had previously only seen in the game, but would now be able to see in real life for the first time, after which he calmly closed his eyes. The next morning, he looked exhausted and admitted he couldn't sleep, thinking about something the whole time. Then the older man woke him up, remarking that this hadn't happened since elementary school. Two young men walked along the path, one yawned sleepily, and the other urged him on, reminding him that they got to the guild much faster in the game. Soon the young man was examining swords, and the merchant suggested the one that best suited his build. The buyer perked up and happily chose the blade. Leonhardt took the katana with interest and said it suited him as a Japanese. Garrett remarked that wielding it was difficult, and after that, the two agreed to go to the guild together. Suddenly, the boy pleaded for help in defending the village from wild wolves. The man doubted the child had written the letter himself, noting that the adults were busy preparing for the defense. The young envoy then explained that he had sent a letter to France's family but had never received a response, adding that the adults did not trust them at all. The two were discussing Noah's heir, claiming he was neither intelligent nor well-mannered, neither popular nor reliable, and that the city was doomed if he became lord. One of them became visibly nervous at these words. The white-haired man asked why they were hiding, and the two cloaked men admitted that they had overheard a conversation about him, realizing that his reputation was even worse than they had expected. Noah's past actions had damaged his reputation, leading to riots and fires. He anxiously insisted he could restore his honor, but was told it was best to turn to someone else and wait. The man rudely told the boy he was in the way, and the boy dropped the coins, quickly apologizing. But in response, he was ordered to get lost, and the rude man moved on. At this time, the young man confidently parried a strong blow with his forearm, while the other widened his eyes in amazement and opened his mouth. He knelt down to check on the child and asked if everything was okay. The child thanked him as people watched. Lion appeared unexpectedly, prompting a surprised question. Someone remarked on his speed, and two people nearby worriedly inquired about each other's condition. The confident young man proudly flexed his muscles, declaring he wore armor called muscles. Another man was amazed, and later thanked the woman for warning him about his cold. The older man reacted with surprise. One man was shocked to see a boy next to a young man and realized the child was Lord Francis's son. People nearby confirmed that this was the rumored heir. Leonhardt reacted sharply to the approach of someone, and the boy recognized him with surprise and curiosity. A large man rudely asked the young nobleman why he had come to the city, while the blonde knight and the child watched from afar. The young man remained silent, stunned. He thought about how people perceived Noah-sama now, and heard someone dismissively call him trash. Then one said that he had come for a field trip as part of his studies, but in response there was ridicule. They called him a worthless aristocrat who had killed dozens of slaves, and burst out laughing. The slick-back man sarcastically remarked that he had given up training and was devoid of talent, and declared that he was unable to fulfill even a simple request from the guild. The red-haired man warned that insulting a nobleman was dangerous and could have consequences for everyone, and the dark-haired man urged the blonde to at least respond with something. The young man stared at the stern elder with all his eyes, and the latter muttered something and anxiously wondered what such a piercing gaze meant. Then a close-up of a muscular torso was shown, after which the scene changed to two people standing in a room, and one was criticizing the poor quality of the other's muscles, complaining that he never showed them for love. Then the dark-haired guy cheerfully declared that his muscles were better, and the white-haired guy sweated in confusion and couldn't find an answer. After that, they headed towards the reception area, but a muscular man called out to them, asking if they were running, and another confidently noted that Lion could handle the task alone. The boy challenged the man standing next to him, assuring him that Noah-sama could handle any task without outside help, but in response, the man stepped on a piece of paper, which stunned the child. The man then ordered Hasbart to remove his leg, but the other mockingly taunted him, and the first threatened action if words were not enough, then grabbed him sharply. Leonhardt demanded that the foot be removed from the child's things, showing a serious and protective attitude. Meanwhile, the boy noticed a piece of paper on the ground and mentioned it, but the man next to him indifferently replied that he didn't feel like moving right now. The young man then suggested that the paper was an important request for the child, and challenged his opponent to try to move it by force, mocking the weakness of the other person's body. At that moment, the young man enthusiastically kicked the adult, shouting about his muscular strength, and happily noted that his opponent was lighter than he expected, surprising the three observers. After the fall, the man hastened to justify himself by saying that it all happened by accident, and the young man kindly handed him a handkerchief, which he gratefully accepted. However, one of those present dismissively rejected the crumpled request as dirty and declared that the reward should be 10 times higher, whereupon the boy anxiously clutched the coins to himself. Noah smiled and asked if he could accept the quest, explaining that it was nearby and he didn't care about the reward. Surprised expressions echoed his decision. Leonhardt noted that Noah was very different from ordinary nobles, and the child praised his kindness. Then the mentor suggested they go to the village, emphasizing Noah's concern for the people. One man abruptly stopped the other, asking if he was really Noah Francis and questioning his need to care about a simple peasant. But the dark figure declared that he would manage the lands on his father's behalf. Then the determined young man assured everyone that he could handle any problems on his territory, and the boy watched with curiosity while the adult nearby listened attentively. The storyteller warned of wild wolves that inhabited the forest to the northwest and traveled in packs, and someone's hand clutched a sword. A strange, spotted creature lay on the rocks nearby. A tall man in a dark cloak noted that so far they had only encountered small creatures, despite the fact that they were in wolflands, and led the squad across the rocky terrain. The young man then used detection magic, but sensed no wolves nearby, and suggested they continue west. The two companions followed him across the cliffs. Soon the two began arguing about how to lead a certain person. One suggested blaming it on an accident in a fight with monsters, while the other coldly declared that the entire family should die. He then explained that using detection allowed him to hear much better, including everything the two had just discussed as they walked through the rocky terrain. After this, one of them waved his weapon furiously, deciding to wait until the enemies came closer, and the other laughed, declaring that this was already the fourth. Leonhardt wondered why he was killing peaceful creatures, but the man smugly replied that the wild wolves avoided his power, which is why they didn't show themselves. Leonhardt then remarked on the oddity of them not having encountered anyone yet, and Garrett suggested that perhaps the wolves had already left the forest, adding that that would be a relief. However, the group soon realized that they were surrounded. From above, from the rocky slopes, came the menacing growling of wolves. Then a huge flock approached from behind the rocks, and one of them noticed with alarm its colossal size, wondering how many of them there were. The two were horrified to see a ferocious mutated wolf standing on a ledge, guarding two smaller individuals. They looked at the massive, altered feral beast atop the cliff, noting the strength it had gained from the mutation, and one confidently prepared to face the A-level threat. Then someone respectfully turned to Noah, promising support from the rear, but another doubted whether he really intended to cope alone. Leonhardt, sweating profusely but maintaining a serious demeanor, realized the perilous nature of the situation. The frightened boy begged for his village to be saved, while the noble youth hesitated, torn between duty and loyalty to his lord's family. Then Leonhardt stood up resolutely with his sword drawn, declaring that they would fight for the sake of the people, and the wolves growled furiously from above, and one of the men covered his ears in horror. At that moment, someone urgently ordered another to join the fight, and as the pack rushed forward, panic began. One tried to run, but the beast grabbed him and growled angrily. Leonhardt leaped forward to meet the attacking monster, while a man crouched in fear nearby and the beast menacingly prepared to strike. One desperately urged Lion to fight, but he calmly replied that there was no need and immediately launched precise and controlled blows. Then the young man admitted that it was the first time he had held a katana, which amazed his interlocutor, who asked if he had been engaged in secret training and how he had managed to achieve such dexterity. Leonhardt drew his sword with determination, and those around him thought he had given up when he closed his eyes, but at that moment, a huge wolf rushed at him with fury. Then he thought calmly about the strange feeling of peace before the fight, as if they had been fighting side by side for many years, and suddenly activated the new power as the monster rushed forward. Leonhardt swung his blade furiously, shouting that this was his move and unleashing a powerful blow straight in front of him. At that moment, someone warned another not to startle him so suddenly, when a huge creature crashed down nearby with a roar, causing shock and fear in the group. Soon, a man greeted Noah with surprise and respect, and then the scene changed to a group sharing a modest meal, admiring the unexpectedly delicious wolf meat. The boy gratefully thanked Noah for defeating his enemies and called him a very kind person, and he responded with a soft smile. After this, the child invited everyone to sit at the table together, urging them to eat while the food was hot, and asked them to repeat once again that they were good people. The boy then happily ate with his hands, declaring that his muscles were happy with such food, while the other noted to himself that Seabass never reprimanded him for his manners in the mansion. Soon, Seabass confronted a man about his rude table manners. The man awkwardly explained that he had come only out of concern for his outing, but Seabass nevertheless decided to teach him proper manners before returning home. The stern man chided him for eating meat with his hands being improper for a nobleman, and then mentioned finding a suitable place to study. The scene shifted to the exterior of the educational institution for nobility. The group listened to the nobleman explain that the institution was created to teach proper manners before entering the academy, and one boy nervously repeated to himself, "Damn it." Eliza was surprised to hear of Cecile Edwards' arrival, and the man announced the start of dance practice and ordered everyone to pair up with members of the opposite sex. One guy hesitantly asked to be his date, and the girl happily invited the smiling man. Meanwhile, another woman affectionately called him a sweetheart. Eliza greeted Noah politely, and he looked embarrassed, but the boy next to him offered to be his partner so that he wouldn't be alone, which Noah was pleasantly surprised by. One girl made fun of Noah for his lack of dancing experience, and he nervously admitted that he couldn't dance at all, while the other couples twirled gracefully. He wondered if he could get along with her, and she calmly remembered that in the game, Cecile and the hero were paired together, and he was afraid of ruining that path by becoming friends with her. She then wondered if she was stealing someone's happy ending and decided it was better to immediately make them dislike her, since in the game the girl abandoned Noah shortly after entering the academy. He nervously decided not to touch her too much, remembering how Noah had been slapped in the face for doing something similar in the game. The girl confidently praised the boy for his impressive turn, but he panicked and exclaimed that he couldn't do that, and, losing his balance, fell to the floor. Leonhardt asked Cecile if she agreed with their marriage and suggested that she be with the one she loved, acknowledging that it was her parents' decision. Cecile found this odd. She admitted that she had not been given the right to choose her partner since birth, and he silently noted that he understood her difficult past. The narrator explained that the Edward family had no children, and so they were forced to legitimize the child they had fathered with their mistress. Then the determined girl told the boy that she would lead the way and try everything again. Eliza assured him that Cecile would still be able to find her happiness with the hero, and he quietly replied that everything was fine. After that, he smiled warmly and said that the decision should be hers, and she looked at him in surprise and slightly embarrassed. He reacted awkwardly to her words and admitted that she was not at all what he imagined her to be, and she asked in bewilderment if he had said something strange. The stocky man angrily accused the kneeling girl of stepping on his foot again, claiming that was why he didn't want to get engaged, while she meekly apologized for her lack of dancing experience. Then the young man was told to speak more quietly, because people were looking at them, but he snapped back sharply, and two onlookers from the side glanced at each other, watching the scene. The stocky man threatened the girl that without an engagement her low-ranking family was doomed to ruin, assuring her that she had no other choice, and she clutched the hem of her skirt in despair. The girl calmly replied that it was just her destiny, while a boy and a girl nearby expressed concern, saying that he was going too far, but that it was impossible to stop. A tense argument broke out in the huge hall about the meaning of someone's gaze, and nearby a girl was anxiously thinking about her destiny, and the man repeated the word fate thoughtfully. Leonhardt sharply warned one man not to disobey him again, saying that such people should get out, and the man looked at him in horror and bewilderment. Leonhardt then used flash step with lightning speed, catching the girl in his arms, which amazed the onlookers, who were surprised at how he moved so quickly as she fell with a dull thud. Leonhardt asked the victim if she was okay, noticing bruises, and realized she was being beaten regularly by Noah Francis.
A debate ensued about whether to intervene.
He then firmly declared that he would not spare anyone who hurt others, no matter who that person was, and one of the bystanders recoiled in fear. He knelt down beside her, urged her to speak up when she was being bullied, and handed her a handkerchief with the family crest, promising to help if she ever asked. The girl thought that Noah was not at all like other nobles and considered him a mysterious person, and he, with a smile, suggested that she make her own decisions. Meanwhile, one man approached the upset woman, while the other watched from the sidelines. The young man nervously thought he was about to be scolded, until the blonde offered to help his troubled partner. She asked him if he didn't like practicing with her, and he quickly denied it, explaining that he considered himself a nuisance because he wasn't a good dancer. Then he hesitantly agreed to continue, and she enthusiastically checked to see if he was holding him correctly and praised his effort as they danced closer together. In another part of the room, a woman decisively announced she was breaking off her engagement, and a man tried to stop her. One bystander looked on sympathetically, comparing the scene to a future breakup. At this point, the narrator explained that the image was of Noah Francis, the infamous heir of the family, who had once defeated a wild wolf and whose reputation had now improved considerably. One man said that the mood in the lands had improved after that incident, but the cat-like interlocutor revealed a plan to start a riot using the Francis family's bad reputation, adding that killing him would be faster. The large cat mockingly noted the vile expression on his face, and the Libra mage named Albus explained exactly how he would handle a similar situation. The two sat at opposite ends of a long table, discussing the assassination order for the hero, debating whether to split up, though one expressed confidence in Noah's strength. One of them declared that everyone was equal before him, holding a crystal in his hands, inside which a bound figure was struggling, and a cat next to him mockingly said that this victim was doomed to die. Eliza apologized for arriving unannounced, but two servants assured her that Noah was currently at the training grounds and offered to escort her there. Meanwhile, one of the muscular men loudly commanded the formation, and 5 people lined up in a pyramid of bodies, and the one in the middle cautiously agreed to keep his balance. The half-naked youth anxiously inquired why Cecil Sama herself was there, while the two figures in the background looked at each other with surprise and uncertainty. Noah looked guilty and said that he hadn't answered her letters because he was busy, and then suggested that they drop the unnecessary formalities while Cecil was nervously preparing to say something that was difficult for her. The girl shyly asked permission to touch his pectoral muscles, causing the naked guy to freeze in complete shock and bewilderment. Then the young man awkwardly realized that showing his nipples in front of a girl was extremely shameful, and 2 men nearby began arguing about jealousy and harassment. The girl shyly asked if it was forbidden, and the boy, blushing, allowed her to try, while another observer stood nearby, feeling embarrassed. Leonhardt struggled to find an expression for what twitched when he touched it, and Eliza reproachfully advised him to formulate it more carefully, which made him realize that Cecil's character was very different from what he expected. The young man carefully asked if she was joking, and she laughed and called him a really funny person. At that moment, the tense guy flushed when he saw the girl looking at his brother, but she calmly asked if he was Kiara and noted that he had a charming younger sister. She smiled warmly and admitted that she was looking forward to the future, because he would become her little brother. Then the girl with 2 ponytails happily called out to Cecil, who felt a lot of pressure from those around her, and the boy awkwardly decided to return to his training. The girl with long blonde hair complained that she had written Noah letters and invitations, but had never received a response, assuming that he didn't love her because training took up all his time. Eliza looked away as Leonhardt sat in front of the huge pile of letters, looking confused, as if he himself was afraid of such a flood of correspondence. Eliza explained to Selena that their brother trained his muscles, fencing, and magic alone, running hundreds of kilometers every day without any pressure from anyone, and that an ordinary person could not achieve such a result. Then the determined young man clenched his fist and thought that although he already seemed strong on the outside, his true essence lay in perseverance and constant work. Later, everyone was sitting at the long dining table enjoying their food. One remarked that everything was delicious, another added that their chef Anbar would be pleased, and then they turned to Noah. The girl asked him if he knew about the 12 magicians, and he asked again in confusion, 12 magicians? The narrator told of 12 elite spellcasters, depicted as shadows, who in the game specialized in killing the hero repeatedly. Noah remembered them from the game, insisting that the hero had always been the target, not him, but she insistently warned that now the real target could very well be himself. Leonhardt noted that the Francis family held a monopoly on national trade and warned that there were many who wanted them gone, while his interlocutor reflected on the family's far more important role. He was determined to protect his loved ones, explaining that the 12 mages were only out for money, but in reality their goal was to build their own state. She warned that these people are not like ordinary people and are capable of doing anything, insisting on caution, because their true desire is to take over the country. The young boy enthusiastically agreed to carry out the task, while one of the men served the main course and another politely asked his tall companion to take out the trash, which he complied with a smile. The white-haired man sternly warned the bound and gagged captive among the garbage bags that the garbage must not make noise while standing near the stone wall under the night sky. One of the men in a formal suit explained that the mansion was securely guarded and even had a poison taster, but Cecil Edward's appearance remained an unpredictable factor, which surprised his interlocutor. The confident man outlined his plan to kill the drug target stealthily while the agitated youth listened anxiously and the third one ate quietly nearby. Noah suddenly felt tired during the meal, and those around him noticed this, assuming that the day had been difficult, and offered to show him to a room to rest. The man in the fur collar watched the sleeping man, thinking that he could easily kill him, but chose to spare him, and then prepared to weigh the scales of his justice. He delivered a devastating kick, knocking his opponent out the window and sending him crashing to the ground, where he wondered in confusion what had just happened to him. The young man abruptly told the elderly warrior in armor that he was unhappy with the old man sneaking into his bed, which greatly shocked his interlocutor. The elder explained that he had suffered from insomnia despite being tired, but now felt energized thanks to the potion, which caused surprise and questions in the young man. The stern man introduced himself as Albus, a Libra mage wielding a blade called the Sword of the Underworld King, while the other character acknowledged the situation as unexpected and irreversible. He recalled that his life had been on the line more than once, and noted that at first, when he became Noah, he only wanted to protect himself, but now everything had changed. The determined young man stood at attention with his sword, the knight next to him dropped to one knee, and the girl voiced her desire to protect Noah, Kiara, and everyone else. Leonhardt, with a firm gaze, drew his blade and confidently challenged his opponent, inviting him to test his strength. He acknowledged his superiority in fencing, but complained about the annoying spells, after which he confidently suggested using a new technique. Leonhardt commanded the fire spell with a concentrated gesture, and although an explosion erupted, the enemy dismissively declared it too weak to cause any harm. The young swordsman quickly closed the distance with the lightning step technique while the elder was distracted by the fire, and prepared a precise strike with his claws. The wounded man winced in pain, blood trickling down his side, and admitted he was no longer capable of continuing the fight, while the young man stood confidently, knowing the duel was over. The young man reacted to the magic with surprise, while the elderly interlocutor, with a serious look, denied the presence of a wound, expressing bewilderment. The scales represented desire and retribution, balancing them with an offer of equal value. The young fighter admitted he had figured this out from a reference book, and the older one, surprised, asked if he knew his magic. The man confidently challenged his opponent to a fight, declaring that even understanding the nature of his magic would not change anything, after which he forcefully thrust the blade into the ground. The elder said with confidence that he had not been injured yet, while the younger was puzzled by his muttering and assumed that the previous spears contained spatial magic, hoping to avoid the trap. The young man smiled and admitted that he found his opponent's magic interesting, causing the older man to ask in surprise if he was mocking him. The atmosphere grew tense as the young man found himself inside the magic circle, and the elder solemnly announced his victory, causing the young fighter to be clearly shocked. The dark figure unleashed a furious spell called Hellfire Bone, and the overconfident opponent with a lion-like face boasted that even an A-rank adventurer would be reduced to ashes by such power. However, the determined young man, surrounded by flames, insisted that the heat was not enough and demanded that it be increased with a furious expression on his face. The man lying on the ground questioned whether his opponent was really trying to kill him, reminding him that Freshia-sensei had a much stronger firepower, while the other one screamed in shock. The youth was worried that burning his clothes would anger Seabass, but the elder pointed out that fire might be useless and resolutely clutched the ornate scabbard. One of the observers marveled at the rare horn of the crystal dragon, wondering what one could pay for such a valuable thing, but a stern opponent declared that no one could resist the judgment of the scales. The enemy ominously announced that the time had come to be crushed by the densest, hardest and largest magical stone, while the youth stood guard, and the gigantic boulder collapsed nearby with a roar. The young warrior struggled to lift a giant stone so dense that even 50 grown men could not move it, while the amazed knight watched in amazement. The young man began to think about creating dumbbells using alchemy, while the older man noted with irritation that the scales did not live up to his expectations. Leonhardt knelt down and said that he could take it back, and the small figure next to him quietly reacted with surprise. The wounded man struggled to his feet as 4 menacing figures loomed before him, and he frightenedly demanded that they stay away, calling them macho monsters. A group of muscular men mockingly told him to call them muscles instead of monsters, and he, shouting maliciously, ordered them to stay away. Several athletes ran enthusiastically around the large mansion. One shouted out that he was hungry for more weight and strength, and the others happily supported him. One of the strong men mockingly ridiculed Albus, who could barely stand on his feet, and admitted that he felt on the verge of death, shocked by the inhuman endurance of his companions. Noah explained that he had originally intended to hand the enemy over to the guards, but the others asked why he was with him, and then it became clear that they had captured him themselves. He explained that taking him under his wing, or rather hiring him for Noah's benefit, seemed the most sensible solution, while she asked in surprise if he had actually said adopt. The dark-haired man confidently stated that they had retrieved the scales and expressed the opinion that Albus would enjoy the training, after which the woman in heels mockingly remarked that Lion's work was not finished and told him to get up. She added cheerfully that with the addition of the wizard Albus, her own duties would become much easier, and then thought cheerfully about how to fill her free time. One man explained to the stunned woman that Albus would now act as a reservoir of mana, providing her with energy for her spells, while the other man reacted with bewilderment to what he heard. He confidently said that only she was strong enough for Noah-sama, and ordered to use Albus's mana to cast as many spells as possible. The redhead reacted with indignation to Lion's cruel proposal, and a girl nearby loudly objected, calling it inhumane, while Lion dragged another girl to the barrel. The red-haired boy demanded to be addressed as senpai with respect, to which the older man reluctantly agreed. At that moment, the blonde, with a cheerful smile, asked what they were planning to do together, and the boy readily offered to help. The half-naked young man proudly declared that the object was a piece of equipment for muscle training, while the surprised girl asked him a question from afar. The young man sat cross-legged, sipping from a barrel-shaped mug, sampling one item after another from the assortment of cans and bottles in front of him. The young man asked Albus for another healing potion, and he nervously repeated the word scales, carefully manipulating some object in his hands. 2 people watched the boy sitting on the ground among alchemical instruments. One noted his recent interest and complete immersion in alchemy, while the other asked with bewilderment what he was doing. He explained that dumbbells made from super hard and dense magic stone are much heavier than normal ones and can have different effects when mana is passed through them. A variety of dumbbells appeared on stage, flying, exploding, increasing in weight, and enchanted to become 10 times heavier. A muscular man lifted massive dumbbells with delight, while another man with an eye patch noticed that he could hear his muscles flexing with happiness. The 2 burly men were admiringly discussing the young master Noah's heightened skill in casting spells, comparing it to their own muscles, while the girl quietly retorted that raising children and building a body were not the same thing. A tired man leaned against a tree, wondering if the mansion was inhabited by twisted muscle monsters who might have spared his life, while a nearby cat wondered if the hero had been killed. The figure sitting by the tree gloomily admitted that he felt something was wrong about someone, while nearby a man wondered where the cat mage he had been fighting had gone. The character stood in a field of flowers under a shining ray of heaven and complained that he was being persecuted just because he was a hero. The self-confident hero Arthur Miriam proudly declared that the weather was beautiful, standing majestically with a small creature in his hand, being destined for union with Cecile in the world of absolute oblige. Garrett stood by the huge dark pit and realized with regret that he had forgotten to bring in the drying laundry, but after thinking about it, he decided that it was too late to go back. The young man acknowledged his opponent's strength, although he called him an idiot, while the cat exclaimed in despair that he did not believe he could be defeated by just one blow. The cheerful boy jokingly called the cat McFatty, to which the latter indignantly protested, and then the young man was surprised that the cat had actually spoken while the animal was pleadingly asking for help. He happily handed over the dumbbell, thanking Cecile for warning him of the danger, and she, a little embarrassed, accepted the gift near the brick wall and trees. Noah was formally greeted by his interlocutor as he stood next to his two companions, and the girl held the dumbbell hesitantly in her hands, unsure whether such a gift was appropriate. The guy was handed a small box, and the other one remarked that it was extremely rude to give Cecile a dumbbell, to which the first one was only slightly surprised. The elder warned the young man that women remember every mistake, especially after the birth of a child, while the girl with plates in her hands nervously suggested something else. She asked if she could open the box, and he excitedly showed her a sparkling ring inside, which amazed both of them. Leonhardt angrily accused Seabass of deceiving him, but he calmly explained that the Lord had prepared something for the two of them, causing surprise in Eliza and another man. The elder reproached Noah for never having met his bride, while the girl shyly asked him to put the ring on her, and another nearby admired his beauty. He looked puzzled when he was asked not to leave Cecile-sama alone again, and with an embarrassed sigh, he agreed to this promise. He gently touched her hand, both of them blushed, and the girl thought that Cecile was beautiful and kind, while he himself hesitated, looking at the ring with conflicting thoughts. A man stood in the middle of a flower field, holding a shining ring and thinking that Cecile's true love was not his, until the woman suddenly called out to a surprised Noah. She shyly admitted that she would keep the ring for the rest of her life, and he froze in surprise, deeply touched by her words.
Noah awkwardly tried to hide his embarrassment when asked what was wrong and responded by awkwardly offering the group another dumbbell.
The young man confidently declared that he could handle running with weights, and three muscular men immediately volunteered to do the same exercise. The young gentleman was opening the box containing the engagement ring while one man politely apologized on his behalf and another calmly remarked that he was not angry at all. Someone thought about how much they had misunderstood Noah Francis, now realizing that this villain was not cruel or ruthless at all, and there was a girl walking next to him who felt that she also understood Noah better. Two men were walking along a path, discussing how one person had managed to change on his own, becoming worthy, and a woman nearby confirmed that she also thought he was wonderful. The confident woman stated that she had seen the real Noah with her own eyes, and the stern man next to her listened attentively, after which he responded with a serious expression. The woman asked Cecile what brought him here today, and at the same time reminded Sebastian of an important event that was coming up, while Cecile thoughtfully considered her words. The group agreed to train together, but someone pointed out that Noah's young owner would have to temporarily give up strength training while others enthusiastically performed exercises nearby. He stared intently at the screen, explaining that he had made an unexpected discovery after checking his stats today. Sitting alone on the bed, he thought that the intelligence, muscles statistic had been showing as unknown all this time, even though he thought it was about understanding the Japanese person's knowledge. The young master shook the sealed cup nervously, annoyed that it would not open, while the servant calmly reminded him that he had missed something important. The older man noted that there was only a year left until the entrance exams to the capital, and the young man, continuing to lift dumbbells right on the bed, thought about how quickly time flies.
Noah noticed Seabass's tense expression while he was doing the exercises and asked why he was so scared, to which the servant responded with concern. The strict mentor categorically forbade any strength training until the end of the exams, and the young heir reacted to this with shocked disbelief. He announced with fervor that he had a date with his biceps today, raising his fist, while someone nearby responded indifferently with mild interest. The tall man lifted a heavy dumbbell and asked the seated boy if it bothered him, causing him to shout out Dan's name in alarm. The young gentleman asked Seabass if it was true that nobles only had to pay to enter the academy, and the elder sighed and noted that despite the stigma of worthlessness and trash, the boy worked himself to the bone. The determined mentor encouraged everyone to take the chance and prove otherwise, and the young man listened attentively, remembering the tense faces from the past. A stern voice urged him to reach the top with his muscles, and the inspired young man imagined a muscular figure, eagerly dreaming of first place. The man told the boy that he needed to take his studies more seriously and announced the appointment of a special tutor, inviting the man inside, his heels clanking on the floor. The woman in the suit introduced herself as the new teacher, promising to teach him every detail and be there every day, which surprised the young man, who called her Cecile. Eliza confidently asked if this outfit inspired him, while Garrett became embarrassed and objected that it was not he who was wearing it, after which he noticed Cecile's unexpectedly toned abs. Noah remembered how Cecile wanted to touch his muscles, and then the girl assured him not to worry, because she was also going to take the exam. He admired her diligence and wanted to follow her example, after which she confirmed her intentions to take the exam,
and they sat down together right on the floor. Noah enthusiastically promised to do his best, and the girl supported him by calling him by name. After that, they began their lessons, beginning with the structure and history of the capital's magical association. Suddenly, Noah went limp and fell, causing alarm in the girl, while the man quickly explained that it was a rare muscular reaction caused by studying. The older man offered to give him a dumbbell as a reward, and the young woman sheepishly remarked that a boy Noah's age might be more interested in girls than books, causing the interlocutor to react with surprise. The older man noticed how much young Mr. Noah had built up his muscles, and the girl, looking at him, realized that all of them had become much stronger. Garrett threatened to take away the dumbbell if the boy continued to doze off, causing the girl to scream that it was a nightmare, and then, nodding sheepishly, agreed to continue studying when he woke up. Lisa suggested that Kitty's failure was due to her lack of experience, while Flamma inquired about who exactly was involved, and everyone confirmed that the whereabouts of the mages were still unknown. The group discussed Arthur's hero Miriam, expressing doubts about his strength, while one man insisted that Albus was a mage whom he personally admired, despite the hero's failures. Those present spoke of the mission to destroy the Francis territory and bring the kingdom to ruin, emphasizing that defeat was unacceptable and Noah Francis must be subdued or destroyed. The dark-haired woman criticized the leader's excessive severity, but he ordered them to get to work immediately, while the sand in the hourglass slowly ran out. Leonhardt, sitting at the table, expressed his dislike for arrogant people who relied only on force, and then turned over the hourglass, lightly touching it with his finger. He asked if there had been an investigation into the Francis territory, warning that excessive power always had a price, and the woman reluctantly agreed, acknowledging their duty. The documents they examined listed Seabass, a legendary retired assassin, Anbar, a fearsome former master hunter, and Orga, an invulnerable captain of the Royal Guard. All of them were labeled monsters, and those present lamented that Albus had gone alone. The dark-haired man insisted that the kidnapping of the second princess, Clay Leoris, remained a priority despite the grief for Albus, while the woman with long black hair noted that the princess was heading to the lands of the Francises. He firmly stated that they would remove all traces and deal with both the princess and Noah Francis, emphasizing the seriousness of the task ahead. The man solemnly declared that it was time to hunt, vowing to avenge his friend Albus, while behind him stood a confident woman, ready for the upcoming battle. Someone rushed into the corridor, shouting bad news, while an elderly man with a stern look demanded to know what was going on. The girl admired him for breaking the object, while the man admitted he was distracted by the dumbbell, and the other responded by calling him a genius. One of them ordered Anbar to find Orga and gather everyone from the muscle troop, and the woman expressed concern about Noah's strength, but the other reassured her, assuring her that there was no need to worry. The serious man explained that he had forced Noah to give up strength training for the sake of his studies, and the girl next to him listened to his words with a worried expression. In an underground room on the Francis property, a man held a wriggling rabbit and asked a dark-haired woman for a lock of hair, to which she responded with an irritated groan. The woman complained that she had just brushed her hair while a man was standing nearby and the rabbit was twitching nervously. Then she picked it up, causing it to tense up and open its eyes wide. Princess Clay, bound and defiant, threatened her captor that she would not let this go unpunished, but the dark figure coldly declared that no one would come to rescue her. 2 fallen knights lay on the ground, and someone said that even 30 royal guards would not have been enough, while the astonished girl was indignant that they were not fighting fairly. The woman in the revealing outfit was tied up and begged the other not to look at her, while the dark-haired woman mockingly noted her naivety and called her a virgin. The man called someone crazy and offered to report her capture, holding a cage with a small creature and making a gesture of submission with his hand. When asked about his actions, Leonhardt answered with a strange object in his hands, while the rabbit silently watched him with an unchanging expression on its face. The man explained that he could control any target using his subjugation technique in Lisa's hair, while the boy listened intently. At that moment, a powerful dragon breath erupted nearby, shocking everyone. Odin commanded the monstrous creature to engage the intruder in combat, and the shocked woman exclaimed as they entered, while the intruder himself complained of the sudden spell cast upon him. The agitated man sharply asked the crouching young warrior about Dan's possible injury, but he carefully clarified why he was being questioned so inquisitively. Freed from the ban on training, he set out on the road with Dan, who agreed that freedom was the best thing, and the merchant even gave them an extra meat skewer. He insisted that going around the city was an important duty for the heir of the family, and clarified that he did not run away because he did not like studying, while combining food and lifting weights. A cheerful girl suggested checking out the next stall, where a salesman was praising fresh broccoli juice, but a stern man rudely pushed through the crowd, demanding everyone get out of the way. The young man greeted Haspart joyfully, explaining that he and his friend were on a journey, which surprised the man, who thought he was alone in the city. The man suggested discussing his love of muscles since they had already met, which stunned his interlocutor, while the other noted his improved reputation among the townspeople and warned him to stay away. He used detection to determine the number of people nearby and sensed two whose strength resembled Albus's, which clearly alarmed him. Leonhardt surveyed the situation and noted that visiting here had been the right decision, and then noticed the captive girl, causing surprise in his companion. He quickly shouted to run and begged not to leave him alone, revealing the truth about the threat of the 12 mages. The stunned man covered his mouth, crying out about the kiss between the girls, and Noah Francis was approached with the words that they saved him from having to search further. He identified the woman as magical heir Lisa, and suggested the man as Flamma the Subjugator, one of the 12 mages. From the characteristics, he realized that the enemy was much stronger, and although the princess begged her to flee, she hesitated, breathing heavily. The tall man warned the lone figure that she had entered a lion's den, but promised that she would be happily eaten, while a woman nearby mockingly urged her not to run away and promised to kindly take care of her. Leonhardt firmly refused to let anyone go, ordering Dana to step back and challenging Lisa, while the mysterious dark-haired figure ominously mentioned magical hair. She unleashed a devastating spell called Thousand Hair Stampedo, forcing him onto the defensive, and loudly declared that she would not allow the enemy to escape. He drastically narrowed his detection range from an entire city to a single room, intending to use surveillance to track enemy movements while also multitasking during combat. She struggled to break through, but her attacks were blocked, and then she called out to Flamma for help. He confidently began preparing a powerful summoning spell while she once again prepared her magical hair attack. The dark-haired man unleashed a technique called Thousand Demonic Fingers, while the other character raised a defensive magic circle in shock, preparing to deflect the blow. Leonhardt commanded the giant hand to crush the enemy, summoning a colossal stone fist that crashed into the ground with a loud thud. After confirming that the enemy was finally dead, the man noted that the noise would attract others, and the woman suggested changing base, while the interlocutor commented on the boy's strength, comparing it to the level of the princess's bodyguards. Suddenly, Flamma responded to a mysterious voice from the rubble, and another man asked what had happened as he struggled to believe what he had heard. Leonhardt, his clothes tattered and his gaze determined, lifted the heavy fragment, shouting energetically about muscle fever among the ruins. He easily lifted the massive boulder from under which the stuck sword was sticking out, and the two onlookers could not believe that the attack had not caused any damage to him. The young man, standing among a pile of stones, noted that he had received very little damage, despite the difference in characteristics, and confidently declared that all he could do was trust his muscles, which amazed those present. One of them expressed surprise that an ordinary man would have been crushed by such a blow, while the other condemned his torn clothes and lack of common sense, reminding him of the mortal danger. Leonhardt sharply asked if they really meant kidnapping the girl, while one of the men made an irritated comment about annoying children, and a third confirmed that the plan was going ahead. One of them calmly admitted that they would have to accept collateral casualties and explained to the younger one that combining magic through the shared use of mana greatly strengthened spells. The man summoned a huge black snake from the woman's hair, demonstrating the Dominance X magical hair technique. Leonhardt deftly dodged the fast-moving dark spheres, narrowly avoiding being hit by one, while the mysterious observer watched closely, preparing for his next move. He warned that if the attack hit its mark, the hair would penetrate the body and take complete control as his armored opponent struggled and the ground beneath his feet cracked. Leonhardt was confident that his muscles were capable of repelling blows, but he knew he had to constantly protect his eyes and ears, and the woman mockingly teased him about the endless flow of hair. He realized that even using the lightning step, he would not be able to close the distance, because Flamma's dog would block the way, and so he ordered the dog to go into emergency readiness mode. Leonhardt gathered his will and rushed forward through the enemies before Eliza's blows could reach their mark, then quickly drew his sword and announced that he was borrowing it from Cecile. The man with the sword was surprised by Noah's request for a duel, but he cheerfully explained that Lion Sensei had recommended him for good training and confidently said that he was ready at any moment. The young man reminded Noah that he was proficient in the Edward style, which had won the last royal fencing tournament, and asked him to fight seriously, while Noah hesitantly asked if that was really allowed. The serious man warned that Cecil-sama, nicknamed Starry Sky, was so skilled that opponents should be extremely careful, while the other two discussed sparring without fear, and one decided not to use force so as not to cause harm. She thought about how she would regret not using her full power, and, drawing her blade, prepared to demonstrate the art of Edwardian-style fencing. He concentrated with extreme attention, then confidently showed a perfect copy of Eliza behind his back, and both figures stood in a fighting stance with their swords drawn. The dark-haired man doubted what kind of skill it was, calling it a semblance, and challenged his overconfident opponent, wondering how long he could maintain such a spirit during the duel. She performed the Edward School's 7-star step as he commanded his magical dog to attack, wondering if he would be defeated too quickly. One of the fighters plunged his blade into the creature, causing the woman to scream in shock. Then there was an explosion, and the dark-haired woman admitted that she had let her guard down. The man stood in the center of a huge crater, and a woman nearby was surprised that such destructive power was released without a spell, concluding that he was not an ordinary person at all. The two sat down outside the building and discussed the urgent need to destroy a distant enemy that posed a future threat despite past defeats. He asked if Lisa could still use magic, and she, squatting, replied that the cut hair no longer moved, which made the situation much more difficult. Leonhardt ordered them to cover him as he intended to get closer and use dominate, while Eliza listened to him with concern and Edward mused that the true essence of fencing was defense. Noah noted that he prefers Edward's style because it suits him perfectly, as it focuses on protection rather than destruction, and the girl agreed, adding that the sword he guards is truly beautiful. The girl released the technique Magic Hair, 1000 Hair Invasion, Deadly Scissors, while the man summoned a giant ice dragon to perform Domination Ice Dragon Burst. He stood confidently with his sword, declaring that by completing the 7 stars, he had proven the true value of the fencing art of the Edward School. The figure summoned a magical sphere filled with shooting stars, while another observer noted with attention that it was an Edwardian-style technique. The confident young man introduced himself as Noah Francis, the heir to the duchy who loved muscles and cared about his people, lifting a heavy dumbbell and striking a sweaty onlooker with it. In a spacious room, a girl and 2 men approached a boy imprisoned in a large cage, while 2 more watched from the sides. The boy apologized for the broken door and the damaged city. The stern man reminded the maid in the cage that the prisoner had damaged part of the city and asked about his forgiveness while the prisoner sat with his head down. She insisted that the man deserved a reward and could even be promoted, while a woman standing next to her apologized for him. The white-haired man respectfully knelt down, expressing only gratitude, while the others watched with surprise and respect. He explained that he had come to measure her, suspecting that she was being forced into an engagement with his friend Cecile, after which he expressed his gratitude and apologized. He reassured them that it was all an accident, but expressed concern. If the princess had disappeared on their territory, their heads would have been at stake. The smiling girl happily agreed when she heard that she was a good person, while in the background the two discussed how they were beginning to envy Cecile. The prisoner in the cage resolutely refused any rewards or money, declaring that he did not need them, which stunned the knight in armor, who demanded to know what he was really trying to achieve. The young man asked to take 2 prisoners, which surprised the guards and the blonde knight, who insisted that they deserved to be executed for kidnapping the princess, but the dark-haired one noted that one of them could be innocent. He accused another of enjoying controlling people more than killing them, explaining that he was talking about domination through spatial magic, which shocked the interlocutor, who asked how he knew this. The man offered to help in exchange for the opportunity to stay in his mansion. The other specified the conditions, and the woman agreed to Noah's offer to return her guard alive, but hesitated without Clay-sama's permission. One man refused to leave, preferring to stay even if he faced the death penalty. Then another ordered the guards to be released, and a third exclaimed in relief when he saw Albus alive, asking if he had been captured too. In a panic, one claimed that it was better to go to the capital to be executed than to stay here, while another, overcome with fear, muttered that the muscles are moving and called this place hell. The man recalled how in his nightmares Lion forcibly poured a bucket of mana potion into him, and the others asked who Lion was and learned that he was a fencing instructor. He admitted that he would like to test his strength in a duel with the dangerous man in the mansion, but another warned him, and a third dismissively waved away the threat. One told Albus to pull himself together, another asked how much longer he would have to sit in the cage, and, having received the answer that it would be open now, Albus joyfully announced that he was finally free. The group learned of Lisa's disappearance, and alarm immediately gripped those present, although one of them tried to calm everyone down. The young man confidently declared that she would not escape from the mansion, and the determined woman, breathing heavily in the corridor, refused to simply sit and wait for death. The confident woman walked down the stairs, declaring that she was beautiful and smart and capable of surviving even without mana, as she had endured far worse countless times before. Leonhardt suddenly grabbed the dark-haired man from behind, causing him to be shocked. He didn't understand how he hadn't sensed him at all, while Leonhardt silently noted that this was his chance. The man demanded to know who she was and said that she couldn't walk around the mansion unaccompanied, while the woman mentally noted that such people were easy to deal with and decided to deceive him. They were discussing how there had been no more strangers since Freysia and another man's arrival, and suddenly one of them tripped, causing the other to ask worriedly about his condition. The woman begged to be let go, explaining that she had been dragged there against her will and was afraid of what they would do to her next. The man asked the woman if she had magic. She confirmed it, and he said enthusiastically that he had been looking for someone like her for a long time, and she wondered in bewilderment why she was being interrogated and doubted the excessive amount of mana potion. The short-haired, black-haired man smiled confidently, holding a huge barrel, and explained that a healthy mana reservoir sleeps peacefully and recuperates as it should. He offered a strawberry drink after she complained about the taste, but the girl sheepishly objected, and then a loud cry of "No" echoed throughout the mansion. Under the blazing sun, 3 people were tied to barrels. One respectfully addressed the other as senpai, and the third sarcastically greeted them with the words that they were in hell.